Okay, welcome to your next module. And so for this module, we're going to look at and discuss plate tectonics. So plate tectonics in geology is a pretty big deal. It's a fairly recent accepted idea of how the world works. So in the 60s, it kind of came about and all the data kind of fit and the ideas started to come together. There was a kind of a beginning back in the early 1900s. You might have heard of continental drift. So that was the kind of the start of this idea that the outer surface of our planet is brittle and is made up of pieces, and that these pieces are in motion. The issue with the earlier idea was there was no real mechanism for how that was happening, even though there was some evidence to suggest that it was. But with technology and the ability to look at the ocean floor, things like that, we got the evidence that we needed to say, oh yeah, it is happening, and we can figure out a mechanism. And some of that is related to, of course, the interior of the Earth stuff that you've kind of gone through already in the previous module. So what we're going to do to investigate plate tectonics is a couple things. So one is I'm actually going to have you go to the United States Geologic Survey's page, and they have an explanation of plate tectonics, the evolution, kind of how did it start, that early continental drift story, and then work its way up into the modern kind of idea of plate tectonics. So when you click this USGS link here, you're going to get to this page. And what I'd like you to do is to go through these little links here, which you basically think of them as little pages, right? So it's going to talk about, what is plate tectonics, and then, what was the history of it, how did it develop, and then how do we use it, right? So if you click here, you'll see that there's some imagery like this first one. We love it, right? It's this short. That's all there is. You can just continue by clicking the next arrow. You could go back to the main page and just click the images. And so it's going to walk your way through here. This little sidebar that you may see in some of the pages is not something you have to investigate for this lecture quiz. It's just the main material here. So you're going to work your way through that content, and that's going to be the main way that you're going to get the content. And then there's a couple videos you can see here. So this first one is animations of these interactions between the plates. So you got to remember that these brittle plates are moving around, and some of them are smashing into each other. Some of them are being torn apart. Some of them are actually sliding past each other, maybe like the San Andreas Fault. You may have heard of that. And so it's kind of good, I think, to see a visual of that. And so these are just examples of the different types of boundaries we can get when we talk about plate tectonics. So you can go and watch those and just kind of voice over them and explain kind of what's happening. And this other video is just a program that plots earthquake and volcano locations over time. And it's kind of the idea to show you how that knowledge of there's something happening here. Why are all these things, earthquakes, volcanoes, showing up and concentrated in some areas and not others? It might have been kind of, it's the impetus for this idea of plate tectonics. So you can take a look at both of those. There is a little study guide. Really what it is just, it's some nomenclature, right? Some words that you should know what they mean. What does subduction mean? What does lithosphere mean? What type of boundaries are there when we talk about, you should know the different types of boundaries. And so if you can go through that list and be like, yep, I know that, yep, I got that, then you'll be fine with the little lecture quiz. But of course, if you're having trouble with the information, just reach out to me so I can help you out. And remember, the other things you'll need to do is there is a little article that I'm having you read about something called hotspots, which is a portion of plate tectonics. It's actually introduced in the upper lecture here, but focuses on it here in the article, and even a review of what we talked about in the lecture, the main lecture content. So go through that before you take the article quiz. And then finally, for the homework, it's just going to be a link to a quiz, untimed, remember, and it's just additional questions about plate tectonics. Within that, there'll be some links to a little video clip and to some other information that I want you to look at before you answer those questions. So that's the main lecture quiz, lecture content that I want you to go through. And then don't forget, you do have a lab to also do. And in this one, we're going to talk about topographic maps, because we need to learn a little bit about map reading before we can kind of use maps in our labs, which we do. So we got to get you up to speed on that. So set up just like the previous lab and all the other labs. You're going to read through the content, learn a little bit about topographic maps, and then you're going to answer questions on those little pop-ups. And so then remember, at the very end, what you get to do is put your name in that little box, print the summary, or take a screen capture of the summary so you can attach it, and then put your name in the box and hit the send email. Okay, that was a little longer than expected, but this is what you're going to do for this week. As always, if you have any questions or concerns or need some help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.